Pac-12 history. Also, Tinkle needs just 7 free throws to pass Mel Counts for the school record, currently sitting at 537. Kyler Kelly leads the Pac-12 and is second in the nation in block shots per game. He's got averaging 3.5, and he already owns a school record for block shots with 192. Oregon State team, although they didn't show it this past weekend, actually led the Pac-12 in free throw, leads the Pac-12 currently in free throw percentage at 74.2%, and fewest turnovers at 11.0. And former Beaver J.B. Bickerstaff has been promoted from assistant coach to head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, with John Beilein stepping down. Back to the women's basketball team. They're ranked 15th in RPI, and according to Charlie Cream, they are a number 4 seed, projected a number 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. Oregon State has been ranked in every poll since the last one of the 2013-14 season. Only teams with that prestigious honor are UConn, Baylor, and Maryland. Beavers have not played a team with a losing record since December 18th against Northern Arizona. Currently, Michaela Pivic is third in Oregon State history with 983 career rebounds. Needs 45 more to set the program record. Impressive for a guard. Destiny Slocum needs 16 assists to reach 500 for her career. And Taylor Jones set the Oregon State freshman record with 48 blocks. Let's go ahead and change gears to baseball. Oregon State is at Mississippi State, all the way in Starkville, Mississippi, Friday through Sunday for a three games that will air on the SEC Network Plus. You can also catch them on the Beaver Sports Radio Network via TuneIn. Game times are at 11 a.m., which was a change from earlier for the Friday game. Noon Pacific for Saturday, and Sunday's game will also be at 11 a.m. Oregon State and Mississippi State have only met 4 times, all of them in the College World Series. Mississippi State eliminated Oregon State in 2013, and OSU returned the favor in 2018. Christian Chamberlain got the start the second game for Oregon State, the first game for Oregon State down in Surprise. He is now 6-1 in his career in non-conference games with a 2.07 ERA. We'll talk a little bit more about baseball coming up. And then the first 11 games of the season are on the road for this team, matching the team's 2016 opening 11-game road streak. For women's golf, it's Ellie Slamis. She's prepared to participate in the Augusta National Women's Amateur April 1st through 4th. They play at Augusta National. The final round, is at Augusta National the following week. Beavers Gymnastics, again, 21st in the nation. They're going to be on the road this week to take on number 10 California on Saturday in Berkeley. That will be televised on Pac-12 Networks at 1 p.m. We're going to go ahead and be joined by Matthew Brooks here. We're going to go ahead and talk a little bit of Oregon State athletics, baseball, men's and women's basketball. Matt, we finally got the sunshine. It's really nice.
Oh, yeah. Happy winter, I guess, right? It's supposed to be February. What's going on, man?
I know, exactly. I walked outside on the way over here. It was nice and warm, although it was a little chilly this morning, but finally was able to, warm up a little bit for the afternoon. So let's go ahead and start with some baseball. Oregon State down in Surprise, Arizona for the annual start of the tournament down there. They faced New Mexico on Friday, won handily 11-4. A loss on Saturday to Gonzaga 4-10. Came back, returned the favor to Gonzaga on Sunday 5-1, and then dropped the final game of the 4-game series against BYU. That was a 3-4 loss down there in Surprise. So the baseball team, Matt, this is a team, you got Mitch Canham, his first year as the Pat Casey head baseball coach. He's still kind of getting his feet under him, but you got some talent rolled over. Obviously, you lose your star player in Adley Rutschman, but I can't say I expected more or less. It seemed like a pretty average performance, kind of what I expected from this team.
Honestly, I don't know how much better Canham could have hoped to start. Coming out, pouring 9, I think it was their first inning, they had 9 runs against New Mexico. So
right.
Hopefully, I think if I'm a Beaver fan, I'm excited. Maybe it's a chance or an exciting opportunity to see what this team is capable of. I don't think it could have gone much better to start that game, come out, hang 9 runs in an inning on New Mexico. Granted, I don't know where New Mexico stands in the rankings, but no matter what, they're still a Division I baseball team. It's still exciting for Beaver fans to see that. Last I saw, they were ranked number 25 in the nation. So, yes, they did lose Adley Rutschman, which is obviously going to hurt because he was ranked as the best baseball prospect since Bryce Harper. I think there's a magazine saying that. So
yeah, Bryce Harper, Steven Strasburg, and Adley Rutschman. Yeah. That's a pretty nice class to be named in.
It's never going to be easy to replace that. But outside of Adley, they did lose some seniors, but this is still a team that returns a good chunk of players from last year. They've got some bright recruits coming in here in the future. The main thing is with those recruits, can they keep those high schoolers from signing professional contracts? Because a lot of them are probably going to be first-round picks.
Exactly. One of the guys from Lake Oswego, former quarterback and now playing on the baseball team, Jake Dukart, had himself a weekend. He's played in 3 of the 4 games. He's batting .600. He had 10 at-bats, 6 total bases. They were all singles. Scored a run. On-base percentage is sitting at .692. Does a great job. He played some second base. I believe he got in at shortstop for a little bit, but he also showed his versatility at first. The other guy is, you like to see the consistency kind of rolling over behind the plate, is Troy Claunch. Claunched 2 home runs. Got two deep balls down there the first 2 games in Surprise. He's batting .308 on the year. Kyler McMahon was Mr. Steady for him. He had 7 hits on 18 at-bats for a good .389.
Not too shabby.
One of the things that McMahon and alongside Claunch and Micah McDowell all kind of leading the team in that stat, but strikeouts were one of the biggest flaws of the team going. You've got an Oregon State team that struck out 43 times over 4 games. So that's not going to help your pitching at all when you've got guys like that. But
and quite frankly, I'm wondering how this team responds this year. They lost a lot of pitchers. They lost Nate Yeske. I think that might bite them a little bit more than they anticipated. Canham's certainly a great hire. He's had a lot of good success in the Mariners organization, but college baseball is a whole different ballgame than professionals. These are kids playing for the love of the game. They chose to come to Oregon State. They're not playing for their livelihoods like these baseball players are.
Right.
And Yeske was widely considered one of the top pitching prospects in the nation, who surely that would be a factor to get. If I'm a high schooler and I'm looking to come to Oregon State, I see Nate Yeske, I'm like, maybe it is worth these 3 extra years.
I know. And then the Yankees actually are pursuing him as well over the offseason. Turned down that job. He's now the pitching coach at the University of Arizona. So a lot of good things for him. Happy for him and his family. Great guy.
Absolutely.
Great pitching coach. So it's great to see you guys succeed. It's kind of a bummer that he couldn't have hung around Corvallis a little bit more. But again, you got guys that had a year under him. Guys like Christian Chamberlain, who went 6 innings and got a first win of the game. First win in the first game, held opposing batters to a .53 batting average, only gave 1 extra base hit, and it was a double, struck out 5 in those 6 innings. Had a good start, and then Jake Mulholland, who a lot of people were counting on to kind of thought about the Matthew Boyd-esque, maybe going from bullpen to starter, kind of his natural position where he came from in high school. Only went 3.2, ended up giving 8 hits, got tagged for 7 runs, all of them earned. Came out of there with a 17.18 ERA. Going to be looking to bring that down. But, some inconsistent pitching. Saw good stuff from the freshman, Cooper Jerpe. He had got the only save on the weekend for Oregon State. Struck out 5 in 4 innings of work. So, good stuff for him, a true freshman. But, again, baseball, they've got a really tough test with Mississippi State coming up.
And I keep wondering, too, what's going on with Kevin Abel? He was there with the preseason. I know he got dropped before the regular season.
So he didn't make the 25-man roster, which means that they're not going to pitch him at all this year. They're going to give him another full year to rehab from the Tommy John surgery.
That's right.
So he's going to go ahead obviously can't say for sure, but it's expected that he's going to end up going pro after this season. I wouldn't see why you'd want to come back and chance another injury. Mm-hmm. Playing at the collegiate level.
What does that do to his draft stock? Because he had a great freshman year, widely tabbed as one of the best pitchers in the country, but he hasn't played in a year and a half.
Yeah, a lot of it's going to depend on how his physical goes after when he comes back, once he starts throwing, getting back to full speed. Saw this a couple of years ago with Beaver pitcher Drew Rasmussen. First-round pick, went 31st overall to, the Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
And so when he got there, first-round pick, then he failed his physical with Tampa Bay, ended up coming back to Oregon State. Didn't pitch at all during the year, but rehabbed, got his arm strength back, worked out with the team, was around the team, and then ended up getting drafted, I believe, the 4th round by the Milwaukee Brewers the next year. So lost out on a little bit of money, but at the same time, it was, ended up working out for him, and all you want to see is these kids get healthy.
Oh, absolutely.
So we'll go ahead and change gears a little bit. Let's talk about women's basketball, because this team that has jumped out so hot is now in the midst of a 3-game losing streak. Lost at home to University of Arizona 65-58, and then surprisingly dropped a road game to USC. Should have been, as they say, a walkover game, but Beavers struggled without Kennedy Brown in both games. They lost to USC Friday night, and then the Monday game on ESPN, they dropped it in overtime to UCLA 83-74. Did you happen to catch either of those two games?
Unfortunately, I couldn't, but either way, I was at the Arizona game last week and saw some of that. Pardon me. Watching that, did you watch either of those two games, the USC or UCLA?
Yeah.
So
both of them.
I saw something against Arizona. It looked to me like the offense was stagnant. Is that what he was doing then against USC, UCLA, where the ball's just, it doesn't have that same movement that it's been, we've seen all year?
I think some of it's got to do with the identity. UCLA, they jumped out to a hot start and then blew a lead in the second half, allowed UCLA to climb back in. But against USC, it was they had it going for a while. They was kind of back and forth, not a whole lot, but I think part of it's got to be Maddie Washington getting used to the starting minutes, but they also got killed by Alyssa, let's see if I can get this right, Pili, P-I-L-I, Alyssa Pili. She went 10 of 14 from the field, 13 boards, 26 points, 3 steals, so the team was just inconsistent, and it was pretty funny. It was USC, obviously, it was also Valentine's Day, and there was like nobody at the Galen Center, and I mean nobody. There was a handful of fans sprinkled throughout, like a couple rows back behind each of the benches and where the broadcasters were, but really, overall, there was not a whole lot of fans there. And I don't know if the lack of energy factored into it, but again, Oregon State just, they played all right, but overall, they just came out pretty flat. I mean, for the game, they shot 33% from deep. They shot 45% from the floor. So if you're looking at that, you're like, all right, the team did pretty well. They let USC shoot 43% and held them to 37 from deep. But again, it just came down. 4 of the 5 starters for Oregon State scored in double figures, but that wasn't enough. You had Michaela Pivic with 16, 12 for Jones, 12 for Slocum, 11 for Kat Tudor. Maddie Washington chipped in 4, but now where they're struggling is where they used to have a lot of depth. That's kind of been eaten up. So now you're playing your starters a lot more minutes. So you don't have your starter was penciled in to be Taya Corsdale, out for the season with a hamstring injury. Now your backup power forward, who's a true freshman, Kennedy Brown, goes out with a torn ACL. It's kind of this next person up mentality. So now you got Maddie Washington, who, all the credit in the world to Maddie, but she's not that true power forward, rebounding specialist. I mean, She cleans glass. She got 11 rebounds against, I want to say it was Arizona. But at the same time, I mean, she's just a different type of player.
Yeah. And honestly, it's obviously nobody wants to see injuries. So first and foremost, we're hoping that everyone comes back healthy. But I remember coming into this season, this just shows the impact of what injuries can do. Because I was tabbing this as the best team Rook has had in 10 years at Oregon State. I didn't write the column. I wrote a column about how difficult Pac-12 was going to be. It's only come true, seeing just how good the Pac-12 is. A USC who's unranked still can come out and beat the Oregon States of the world. But I truly believe that this was the year. If Oregon State was going to win a title, this was the year to do it. Because Oregon, they're tremendous, probably the best team in the nation. Right. They've got 5 5-star prospects coming next year. Mm-hmm. Oregon State, granted, rankings don't mean anything. If you're getting the right fit, they usually don't mean anything. But still, Oregon's not going anywhere. These Pac-12 teams that are blowing onto the scene, Stanford's been really good for a long time. Oregon's kind of followed the same path as Oregon State, where we're just kind of blowing up at the same time. Right. UCLA's fantastic. Arizona State this year, I don't think they were ranked. Arizona State wasn't ranked at the beginning of the year, but
then they knocked off Oregon and Oregon State
in the same weekend.
Right.
Like the Pac-12 is not going anywhere, which is honestly this is the scary part about it. And quite frankly, it's one of the things I find most fascinating though, is that transition from so long for me growing up. It was always just UConn winning
right.
with their like 80-something game win streaks with
It's the first time in almost 10 years they've been out of the top 5.
Yeah,
coming in at number 6 in the rankings.
That's all I ever knew with women's basketball. Then I get here to Oregon State, and there's Ruick and co. in the Pac-12 catching up, and now I don't know if UConn's even going to play for the title this year. Honestly,
a lot of good teams.
I think it's Oregon's to lose.
Yeah, Oregon's going to be up there. You've also got South Carolina's fielding a very good team. Baylor's going to be up at the top. But
Louisville
again,
already beat Oregon earlier in the season, too.
Right, but I think this is a much different Oregon team than the team we saw earlier in the year. I mean, the way that they swept Oregon State on the Civil War, I mean, granted that it was much closer here in Gill Coliseum, but still, it was a very, very, they dominated. It wasn't like Oregon State felt like they had a whole bunch of life. I mean, there's a lot of energy for the women's Civil War, especially in Gill. I mean, they kind of got thumped down at Matthew Knight, although they only ended up losing by 12. Still, it seemed like it was a much larger deficit than it was. But going back to your thought about Arizona State and Arizona, you got to give Arizona head coach Adia Barnes a ton of credit. She's done wonders, because it used to be where Arizona State and Arizona, especially Arizona, was just the bottom of the conference, and everybody just wrote them off year after year. And now Coach Barnes has got them, in the top 25 consistently for the past few weeks, and they're defeating Oregon State, almost beat them down in the desert, and then got them on the road up here in Corvallis. So, I mean, you got to credit where credit is due. The Pac-12 is very deep from top to bottom, and it's up there with the SEC in terms of the top women's basketball conferences.
And honestly, too, what I'm liking the most out of this, even this makes me think about Missouri State, the point I'm going to make. Mm-hmm. There's so many of these coaches that are blowing up on the scenes. It's not like they came from the UConns of the world. They're not, like Greg Popovich is doing in the NBA, where they're coming out of the Gino Auriemma coaching tree. These are people coming from nobody really knows where. Scott Ruick was at George Fox, which is Division III school that unless you're from Oregon, odds are you've never heard of it, right? Adia Barnes, where'd she come from? I think she was coaching professionally elsewhere. Like, these are coaches who are building programs, and they're not like the highest profile coaches, but they're still building top quality, world-class programs. And honestly, I think it's exciting too for people to watch, to have these role models and these unique stories to say, hey, look, here's a person who might not have had access to the exposure that comes with a big program, but they're still finding ways to get them and their teams in the spotlight and take down these big flashy names.
Right. And you mentioned it, and that's what USC was able to do this weekend, though, down in LA. They were able to take down Oregon State, who's been kind of the perennial power, top of the Pac-12. I mean, the Pac-12 has had, I think, 4 different winners the last 4 years. So that just kind of tells you any team can really win at any time. Of course, this year, Oregon's much more dominant than, the top team has been kind of in the past couple of years. But regardless, I mean, Oregon State's 19-7. And they've lost their last 3, and Charlie Cream's still putting them at a 4 for the NCAA tournament. So that just tells you where they're at on a national scale.
Yeah, it's insane just to see. And honestly, if I'm Scott Ruick, I'm hoping to turn this around. I think they just need a punch of confidence, though. They've lost 3 in a row. They have an opportunity coming up against, who are they playing this week?
They got Stanford first, which is, I think that's going to be, I really liked when Oregon State plays the tougher team of the 2 first, because I feel like when a team gets crushed by Oregon, like Stanford did when they came up to when they had their Oregon road trip earlier in the year, they got crushed by about 30 at Oregon, came back, rallied, beat Oregon State by 3. But I don't think that they have that same drive if they don't, get absolutely wrecked the night before down in Eugene, or 2 nights before. But so that's, I kind of think it works to Oregon State's advantage here, getting Stanford first. Again, it's just my thought, but I think that if Oregon State's coming in, they're mad off the UCLA loss, shouldn't have let it go to OT, should have won that one in regulation, mad that they dropped to an unranked USC team, and you're coming off of a loss to Arizona. I mean, they got to figure it out and turn it around. The one thing I will say, though, is that you'd rather see them face that adversity and suffer these losses during the regular season and be prepared for the Pac-12 tournament than you would see them going through this phase, maybe the last 2 games of the year, and then dropping the first game of the Pac-12 tournament, and then you're got a question mark going into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, to play devil's advocate, I would almost say the contrary, because They've got Stanford first, and then they've got Cal. Last time they played Cal, they won 81-44. Noel Manning came in and played 10 minutes. Now, that's no disrespect to Cal because obviously they're playing in the Pac-12, and Oregon State is, while hurt, Oregon State's still a top 25 team in the nation, even with all these injuries.
Cal's 2-12 in the conference.
Yeah.
They're at the bottom.
So at this point, though, I think I would almost disagree with that because Oregon State's lost 3 games. They haven't had much adversity this year. Before conference play, their only loss was to Team USA, and they might have lost by 16, but they were in the game most of the game. It was the second half when the professionals pulled away.
Right.
So I feel like in this situation, to have a Cal game where they could theoretically, granted, people thought USC was a walkover game as well.
Right.
But to have a team that Oregon State knows we can win, we can beat them by a lot, and we can let a lot of players come in and make an impact. I feel like that would almost be good to give them that confidence boost.
Yeah.
It goes both ways, though. Like, either
Right.
on one hand, they need the confidence boost, but on the other hand, they're obviously not going to be very pleased right now that they've lost 3 in a row and just dropped 1 to USC.
The reason I like it the other way is because I tend to feel, and I think this might have happened with the series down in LA, you overlook USC to UCLA. You know, you start preparing a lot for UCLA, and you kind of just think, okay, you know, USC will just take care of them on the road, and then you don't do it. That's kind of where I'm coming from. If you've got a Cal team that you're like, okay, we blew them out by 40, this is going to be a piece of cake. Let's focus a little more on Stanford coming up, and then all of a sudden Cal comes out and punches you in the mouth and makes a rally, and then they've got another upset.
Then what?
You know, so I think that they kind of need to face the adversity head on, which is why I like them playing Stanford first. I could really see them squeaking out a win. Of course, if they were to beat Stanford, that would help Oregon kind of secure their position at the top of the conference. You got Oregon at 13-1 in the conference. Stanford right behind them, 12-2. UCLA at 11-3. Oregon State right now is sitting at 6th in the conference. So the one thing that I guess would be advantageous for them would be that if you're thinking Pac-12 tournament and they're the 6th, guess who doesn't have to face Oregon until the finals if they were to go that far?
It's true. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, Oregon's just unreal, and I think that happened last year too, where they got knocked out pretty early in the tournament. Ran into, I can't remember who it was, ran into somebody, got knocked out early, and at this point, with the way the season's playing out, with these losing 3 games, dropping to number 15 in the nation, the Pac-12 tournament is more important than ever.
Right.
Because if they're going to get that higher seed, they want that higher seed to get a better, draw. They want those first round buys. Obviously, ideally, you'd like to get the Portland. Odds are that's not going to happen unless they come out and win the Pac-12
I think
tournament.
right now you're looking at a 4 seed in the Greensboro.
Yeah. It was either...
So over in North Carolina.
Yeah. No matter what, you're wanting to get as high seed as possible because in theory, you're playing the lowest seed, which...
Right.
Again, in theory, we've seen crazier things happen, but it almost ensures them a further run.
Right. And also top 4 teams for the women's tournament get the first 2 games at home. So that's going to be a huge advantage. If Oregon State drops to a 5 seed in the NCAA tournaments, that means that they have to go on the road for the first 2 games to whoever the 4 seed is, that they would be the host school for the first 2 games. Oregon State's been able, to host the past couple, I want to say last 3 years, maybe just off the top of my head, going back to 2016.
Something like that. I think they won the Pac-12 in 15, 16, and 17.
Right.
So, yeah, sometime 2015,
I'm talking
2016.
NCAA tournament, though. They've got those first 2. So, because I know that last year they played Boise State. Boise State was a 13 seed. They played them at home. Boise State ran them into overtime. Year before that, they played Long Beach State when they were a 2 seed. Long Beach State was a 15 and gave them a close game. So, that's one of those things that home court advantage kind of comes into play late, especially when Oregon State starts to, overlook a team. But again...
And honestly, at this point, too, even if they win out to end the season, their confidence is still going to be shaken. They've, win out the regular season.
Yeah, they're lucky enough that they have Washington and Washington State at home to wrap up the regular season. That should help.
And that might be a confidence boost game, kind of like what what I'm imagining Cal might be.
Right, so you got Cal, Washington at home, Washington State at home. So that's there's your confidence boost to end the season right there if Oregon State can put all the pieces together.
Yeah, just get that offense going, get back to basics, get some victories, and get some confidence in the players. And then that way they can theoretically hit the Pac-12 tournament in stride because, yes, having good players and a good scheme is important, but a lot of times it's all about finding that momentum at the right time because there's a lot of teams that have made runs historically from should have been first-round exits. They're making runs to the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight. So
always get your Cinderellas.
If you can hit your stride at the same time, have your Cinderella run, except you've got one of the top 25 teams in the nation, that's a team that could do some damage.
Yeah. I agree with you, because whenever I'm filling out my men's bracket, I always like to pick the teams that are hot coming into the tournament. Last year my team was Auburn, that I picked those kind of hot, had them going to the Final Four, and they actually did. So, it stands true some of the times. Again, sometimes you'll just get an unlucky draw, or you have a bad game at the wrong time, and that's the beautiful thing, but also the cruel thing about college basketball and the tournaments is that it's one and done. So there's no series. This isn't the NBA. You're not getting 7 games. I mean, you got one game to prove that you're the better team.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering how much the loss of Taylor Jones is going to hurt them, because
Kennedy Brown.
My bad. It's been a long day. Kennedy Brown, because you had mentioned it. She's been starting all year, but the one thing she's a great shooter. She's an underrated shooter. Ruick told me, I think it was after the Cal game when I was there, Ruick was saying that he predicts Kennedy Brown at some point in her Oregon State career is going to be upwards of 40% from 3.
Right.
So she's able to stretch the floor, and Taylor Jones, and she's proven to be dominant down near the block. It almost opens up the offense for the Destiny Slocums to cut through those channels.
Right. Kennedy Brown she struggled to get her shooting and scoring going. I trust Scott 100% that she'll get there, but it wasn't there this season. I feel her biggest asset was, aside from defensively, was rebounding. She was cleaning the glass, leading Oregon State in rebounds. Of course, now you got Michaela Pivic, and this is what the Beavers did. Kind of wrap this up before we switch gears to men's basketball, but they had Michaela Pivic running about the 4. So they had Aaliyah Goodman out there with Slocum, Tudor. You kind of have Pivic as the quote-unquote 4, and then you've got Maddie Washington running the 5. So that gave him a little bit of a small ball look. Maddie's only 6'1", 6'2",
something like
at
that.
Highest, or at tallest, excuse me. But
Brown's 6'6". I think Jones
listed at 6'6", probably 6'4", 6'5". Taylor's.
I will say this: Taylor Jones is listed at 6'4". I've walked past her after press conferences. She's legit. I'm 6'3", and she's as tall as I am. So I don't question that. Kennedy, but you're right though. A lot of heights are sometimes, I don't want to say embellished.
I'll give Kennedy 6'5". She's tall.
Either way, they've got some height in the front court, so that's got to be part of that adjustment, is moving from 6'4", 6'5", to 6'4", 6'1", or 5'10", 6'1".
Yeah, especially with the small ball lineup. Go ahead and switch gears to men's basketball. Oregon State coming in to their weekend. They're headed down to the desert. They've got Arizona first, and then Arizona State to wrap up the weekend. And we've got Oregon State coming in at 3-2 in their past 5 games.
That Colorado game was frustrating.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So, we can kind of briefly recap Utah. It was a 19-point blowout. Everything was hitting for Oregon State. They limited Timmy Allen, who smoked them. They limited Rylan Jones, who killed them last time from deep. Kyler Kelly was bothering Timmy Allen inside all night. I mean, Utah just struggled to get anything going. They've struggled away from Utah on the road this year, and especially against Oregon State in recent history. Oregon State put up 70 behind 16 from Kyler Kelly, 13 from Ethan. Trace wasn't his usual self, 4 of 11 from the floor, but he was able to get 11 points to continue his double-digit scoring streak. Reichel put in 10 points, and then you got 8 from Jared Lucas off the bench. Hollins chipped in 5, Sean Miller-Moore 3, 2 for Gianni Hunt, 2 for Roman Silva. So 70 points for the Beavers, and they held the Utes to 37% from the floor, 26% from deep. Utah didn't help their cause with the free throw shooting. They only went 50%, 8 of 16. Again, leading scorer, only guy in double digits was Brandon Carlson, and he only had 13 and was pretty efficient, 5 of 9 shooting, but again, one guy couldn't carry him. He only had 28 minutes, dealt with a little bit of foul trouble as well. Let's go ahead and talk about the bad one. Colorado.
So I was on the radio with Soren for that game, and that was one of the most
brutal.
I've been watching sports since I can remember, and that was one of the most frustrating performances I think I've ever seen.
Yep.
Tyler Bay was just eating their cookies. I think he had like 25 and 14. Oregon State tried running some zone. All he would do is get it in the low block, low or short corner, shoot a fadeaway. Worked every single time. But that has to be one of the worst shooting performances, too, that I've seen in a while.
Oh, my goodness. They didn't even break 50.
19 of 57 from the field, 1 of 17 from 3 for 5.9%, and 8 of 17 from the line. You talked about it earlier. Oregon State's this season been one of the better free throw shooting teams in the Pac-12, if not the best. I walked in right as you were saying that.
Yeah, they're the best in the league so far.
And they came out and shot 47.1% from the line. Now, granted, they lost by 23, so if they would have shot a higher percentage, they would have still lost by double digits, but certainly that's got to be hurting the confidence when the shots just aren't falling.
Right. And this Oregon State team is in, I think they're having one of the worst conference shootings percentages from deep. As a team, Oregon State is shooting 26% from 3 for conference. And I think that's one of the bottom 5. So, I mean,
yeah, it's
bad.
It's one of those things where it's not like certain games, it's not like they're getting bad looks. For me, I've noticed a trend to certain things. Either one, like watching the USC game a few weeks back in Gill Coliseum, they run that motion offense, and the motion offense opens up looks. It's the offense does a pretty good job of getting them good shots against USC. Either sometimes I feel they're too passive, where at USC I watch them pass up 4 good looks and then shoot a contested fadeaway mid-range jumper at the buzzer. Or you have nights against Colorado where you get good looks. They're just not going in. Right. So now the challenge for Wayne Tinkle is, how can we continue this offensive approach but get the shooting numbers better? Trace Tinkle entering that Colorado game, which, mind you, he shot, let's pull this up. Yeah, Tinkle was 3 of 15 before those games. Just going back a few games, Utah, he was 4 of 11. University of Oregon, 4 of 13. Cal, 6 of 15. Stanford, 5 of 13. USC, 6 of 16.
He's been pretty inefficient from the field.
He hasn't been. This was supposed to be Trace's year where he blows up. I think he was on the Julie Serving Award watch list. This was supposed to be the year that, Trace does his thing. And no disrespect to him, because obviously he's out there trying. He's been their leading scorer the last couple of seasons, but he has to be better.
Right. And one of the things is that, Trace is a great player. Teams are queuing in on his tendencies. So I watched the broadcast on Fox Sports 1, and they had Tad Boyle and Wayne Tinkle mic'd up the entire time.
Oh, that must have been interesting.
All access, no commercials. They gave you full access to the timeout huddles. Every time they got into there, Tad Boyle's like, make Tinkle go right. We are not giving up the left hand. They shut him down driving to the left. They forced him to take tough shots. They forced Oregon State to try and shoot the 3, obviously 1 of 17, just clogged the lane. I mean, Tad Boyle's got to be a candidate for Pac-12 Coach of the Year with the way he's taken this Colorado team. But that was just a great effort by Colorado defensively. And, Trace was doing everything in his power to try. He had 13 rebounds. I mean, he was hustling.
He's finding ways to get involved, which is a sign of a good player. If the shot's not falling, you're still finding ways to get involved.
But if you've got a guy who's supposed to be your 3-point specialist in Reichel, and I love Zach Reichel. He's an awesome player. I love the energy on the dunk against Oregon, the big 3 to seal it. I mean, that was just great stuff. But you got him going 0 of 3 from deep. Jared Lucas, your other sniper, going 0 of 2 and from the deep, 0 of 4 from the field. I mean,
Ethan Thompson,
you got to get some help around him. Yeah, Ethan Thompson went 0 of 5. Ethan had 17 points. Again, Ethan needs to just be more aggressive as well, because people key in that Trace is basically most of Oregon State's offense. Ethan takes the secondary looks. I want to see Ethan attack a lot more. To me, and again, I'm not a coach, but at the same time, it seems to me like he's just dribbling at the top trying to set up that offense. And I get it, Wayne runs the Princeton. But again, I'd almost like to see him working off the ball more, looking to get his shots, looking to become a scorer. But again, I mean, if Wayne says it's best for him to create, that's good. I really did enjoy, though. The one thing that I really liked was Wayne's energy as a coach on the sideline. Like, just watching him interact with the team, it got me fired up to, I wanted to go out and play for him. But at the same time, some of those guys didn't respond to that, super well. And again, it's got to be the pressure or, what comes with losing. It's got to be frustrating. And then again, it's all starting to wear on him over the long season because, as a defensive-minded head coach, those practices can't be very fun, I mean, I'm sure there's times, but overall, you're probably doing a lot of running. You're doing a lot of practicing without the ball. You're not it's not like you're running the motion offense where you've got guys going on cutters. It's a fun offense to play. And you got the Princeton, which is basically everything's scheduled for you. When it works, and everybody's hitting and it's having fun. But when it doesn't and teams cue in on it, it's really frustrating to play that, especially when you're playing a team like Colorado. You're switching it up on defense and they're still beating you. They came out several times. They would show the 1-3-1 and then drop into the 2-3 to try and confuse them. And Colorado just went right to Tyler Bay each time. Again, Bay finished with 21 points, 15 rebounds. Just, incredible night from him. McKinley Wright also had a double-double, 13 points, 10 rebounds.
So I almost wonder that I asked Soren this on the broadcast, but I want your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Did Colorado's defense win that game, or did Oregon State's offense lose it?
100% Colorado's defense. They plugged the lane. Tad Boyle knew exactly what was coming almost every time. At one point, Colorado runs a lot of man offense, and you could hear on the broadcast because we had the coaches mic'd up when I was watching, and Tad Boyle goes, "Okay, we're gonna go into a zone until they score. As soon as they score, they drop back into a man." Held Oregon State scoreless for about 4 or 5 possessions. That's kind of what sparked that big second half run where Colorado began to pull away. Oregon State's got to figure out how to score on a zone defense, because that was when he went to the 2-3 zone. That was Tad Boyle saying, I am going to plug the lane. I am not going to get beat on a drive. I'm going to force you guys to make threes, and until you guys can make a jump shot, I'm going to stay in the zone and plug the lane.
And I almost wonder, how does Oregon State beat that? If they're targeting Trace Tinkle, the way
down threes.
The way to beat a zone, you knock down your threes, or if you're trying to get closer looks to the basket, you go to the elbow and you go to the short corner. You go to where the players are not.
And that's Trace's game, is right at the elbow. He's so perfect because he's so smart with the pass. He can take you off the dribble. But when you've got Trace getting doubled every time he gets the ball in time, and not just doubled, but you got one guy matched up and one guy on what would be his left, forcing him to go right. That's just not his comfortable side. And it's just proven he's so much more efficient with when he's working to his left, because that's just his dominant. Yeah, exactly. His dominant hand. So,
and that almost makes me think about you brought up earlier Ethan Thompson as a secondary option. Obviously, you tried to go to Ethan, but he was struggling to get the shot falling. Next season, if Ethan's here, I know he's declared for the draft in the past to hear what people has to say, but say hypothetically, not saying he will or will not, but Ethan comes back next year. How does Ethan respond? Because he's been a secondary scorer for 3 seasons. I think he's
going to the draft, personally.
You think it's what? Yeah.
He declared last year. Obviously came back because he didn't hire an agent, and they've got the new rules with that set up. But again, I don't see him coming back after a year like this, I think. But again, Ethan's so athletic. You saw his ability to get to the rim, threw down a monster one-handed flush. We saw his two-handed reverse off two in transition in a game earlier this year that I was just like, whoa, I did not know he had that in his bag. But he's just got to get more consistent as a scorer. And
so do you think then he's been used a lot as a point guard this year, initiating the offense? Has that hurt his draft stock, forcing him to be more of a playmaker and shooter when he's obviously more of a slashing athletic guy?
I'm really not sure. I think a lot of people still view him as a point guard. I think it'll be different for him in a different offense because he'll get the ball out of his hands quicker. That's one of the things I just want to see him is him giving the ball up quicker. Oregon State kind of initiating that offense rather than and trying to push the tempo a little bit. I know the Princeton isn't designed for that, but I just would like to see Wayne kind of coach on his feet a little bit more. Try to say, okay, you know what? Even though this is our offense, let's just push the tempo and try to get some buckets here. Let's run. They ran a set play for Jared Lucas, and then they had him in a timeout, and they were showing him. Wayne said something to him, and he rolled his eyes. So Wayne left him on the bench for a good 10 minutes, 10, 12 minutes, got him in at the end of the game. But again, that kind of makes me wonder about this team as a whole going forward. You see guys rolling their eyes at coaches. Where's the continuity? How much of this team is still completely bought in? How many of them? Because right now, according to, SB Nation's got him as I think it was a 5 seed.
In what, NIT?
NIT. Yeah, SB Nation's got Oregon State as a 4 seed, and D Ratings, who does bracketology for NIT and the NCAA tournament, they've got him in as a 5 seed in the NIT. So the 5 seed with Colorado State, Notre Dame, and St. Louis. So Oregon State's got a chance, though, this week. They go down. They face Arizona on the road. They've got a chance for another quad 1 win, 2 this weekend, because they've got Arizona on the road. That's a quad 1 win opportunity. And then you follow that up with Arizona State, another quad 1 win opportunity, both ranked respectively 3rd and 4th. Arizona and Arizona State in the Pac-12, both sitting at 8 and 4 in the conference. Oregon State right now is at 7th or 8th. Either way, I can't count right now. Been a long day as well. So they're 5 and 8 in the conference. They're 15 and 10 overall. So I think if they could get to how many games do they have left? They've got 5 games left. So I think you got to go 4 and 1. And you got to beat, obviously, so their last game is against Cal. And then you've got to get 3 of 4 wins against Arizona, Arizona State, Oregon, Stanford.
It just, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
It's not. And that's the thing that's frustrating as an Oregon State fan. If you're looking at this and you say, I've seen this team play up to their competition, I've seen them at their best, I know that they are an NCAA tournament team when they're playing to their full potential.
And the way they play to their full potential,
right?
The shots fall. I can't think of the last time they had a marquee victory where the offense, 4 of the 5 starters didn't score double digits.
Oregon State's undefeated in games where they have a higher shooting field goal percentage than the opposing team and have not won a single game where the opposing team had a better field goal shooting percentage than them.
I mean, in logic, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But
it doesn't usually fall true 100% of the time, but for Oregon State, that's how it's been this season. I mean, it's just been when their shots are falling and they're playing well defensively, I mean, they win it. And it sounds simple, but
it's boom or bust.
It's really not. I mean, all this team has to do is just show up, get some shots going.
Granted, it's easier said than done to say,
exactly,
you just got to show up.
100%.
But really, if the shots are falling and Trace can find a way to figure out his right hand to open up looks for the Thompsons of the world,
or just design set plays for Reichel or Lucas to get them going from 3. Because once Reichel or even Lucas get going, then they start getting a rhythm. But they go to Tinkle really often too early, which kind of sets them up for failure. Because then you don't get guys like Reichel, Hollins, Lucas, Sean Millermore getting into rhythm, because the first shot, even though it's usually for guys coming off the bench, but I think it holds true to Reichel as well, especially for shooters. That first basket is so important. And
honestly, the thing with Reichel that I've seen this year is I can usually tell if he's going to have a good game by the first 5 minutes, because Reichel's thing is he's so passive on offense. Yep. I don't know if it's because, I don't know for sure, but I get the sense that perhaps there's some coach's son favoritism going on because Tinkle leads the team.
I wouldn't call it that. What I would say, though, is that, and because I think women have the same coaching style, whether it was Trace and Ethan or 2 guys of their quality with different last names, relies heavily on his starters.
Yeah. He
likes to go to the guys who he knows can get him a bucket. He wants to get that early lead and jump out with those guys. And I think if you had, Trace Thompson and Ethan Tinkle, 2 guys who aren't even related to the coaches, he would still go to those guys first, which is unfortunate because then while building up and hopefully jump-starting your team, you're also bringing down the confidence of the other guys around them because they feel like they're not, as involved. I feel like they're not getting the looks that they deserve, I guess. I feel like they can't get a rhythm going. That's one of the biggest things in the game of basketball is getting that rhythm going. Once you feel as a team, you've got this continuity, everybody's getting looks. Like when let me just pick out one of their good wins from this year.
What? Oregon?
I wouldn't say the Arizona, but yeah, let's take the Oregon game.
Back to Reichel. We knew Reichel was going to have a good game early in that game. Reichel and Hollins both, because Reichel hit a 3 early. I remember Hollins I think it's the first 5 or 10 minutes, he had a step back 3 that crowd went crazy. So if you can incorporate those guys into the offense, you can usually tell pretty early if there's going to be a good game, or if they're going to have a good game, or if it's going to be, we're just trying to get the ball back to get back to our stars.
All right, so we'll go ahead and before we wrap this up, Matt, let me get your thoughts. You got Arizona, Arizona State. What are your predictions for the Beavers for the men's?
That's tough because, again, it comes back to which team shows up.
Right.
They have the potential to certainly win 2. Realistically, after that Colorado game, granted, Colorado's very, very special defensively, proven that throughout the entire year. I think they're one of the top teams in the Pac-12 defensively. I think Oregon State, my over/under would be 0.75. I don't know if they'll get one. They could snag one of them, but it really.
So if they were to win one, who would you say of the 2?
I would almost say Arizona, because they would have that confidence of, remember last time we played and we beat you by 15 or whatever it was. So that might be the edge. And like you talked about the women's team, they have all week to prepare.
Right.
Their game planning, their focus is on Arizona. Well, even though they are game planning for both Arizona and Arizona State, obviously their focus is going to be on Arizona because that's the first game that they've got.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say if they're going to snag one of them, I could be wrong, but if they're going to snag one of them, I would say Arizona. But realistically, in the final 5 games, Arizona, Arizona State, Oregon, Stanford, there's really only one of them that I think, even on an off-shooting game, they could win, and that's Cal, but Cal beat them last time.
All right. So you're thinking a loss to Stanford and then a rebound for Cal for the women's?
I'm talking men's.
Oh, okay. I was going to go ahead and switch gears really quickly.
Yeah, for men's, Arizona, probably Arizona if they're going to win. What about you? What are you thinking?
For men's basketball, I'm going to go, I would say, drop the first one to Arizona, and I think that they bounce back with a win against Arizona State. I don't know why, but I think Oregon State seems to have some sort of success on the road against Arizona State. And honestly, I'd like to see that jumpstart a run. I really think that, if they were to able to get something going at the McHale Center, that they could get the, if they can get it going, they've got a good shot. But again, I just see the more likely of the 2 games for them to win would be Arizona State. Go ahead really quickly before we go, switch gears, women's basketball. I thought you were going there already, but not quite. We'll go ahead. Stanford on Thursday, and then you've got Cal on Saturday, I believe is the schedule.
Yeah. Cal's at 2 o'clock Saturday, Stanford at 8 o'clock on Friday.
Friday. So then that would be a Sunday game, or they go back to back?
Friday, 8 p.m. at Stanford, Sunday at 2 p.m. at Cal.
Okay. That's what I thought. I was like, oh, I got the men's on Thursday. They don't usually play the same day.
Yeah.
So women's, let's hear it. What are you thinking?
Cal, we'll just say that Oregon State pulls that one out because they showed last time, beat them by 37. Cal's 2-12 in the Pac-12. No disrespect to them. Stanford, I don't know if Oregon State's going to be able to get it done. As much as deep down inside, I want to give faith to Ruick and all his players because it's obviously they're putting in hard work to try and get the victory. But Stanford is just so good.
Yeah.
Oregon State is lost 3 in a row. Granted, they've been relatively close games going to OT against UCLA, having that egg against USC. But Stanford is just so unbelievably good. Oregon State's depth in the front court, you talked about it, 2 starters, 2 people who were supposed to start at some point in the season are out. I don't know how you can get around Stanford with how good they are and the run that Oregon State has been on. Granted, they could come out guns blazing and destroy Stanford and carry that momentum, but I just don't see how you can get around such a high-quality team at the current rate.
Right. I'm going to go ahead and pick a sweep just because I think they get revenge against Stanford, and then I think that they were able to, knock off Cal again. But the one thing that does scare me about Stanford is you do have Tara Vanderveer on her home floor. It's been a struggle for the Beavers to win at Maples, and it's just been tough. But I think that they're going to find an identity and how to regroup with the loss of Kennedy Brown. All right, we'll catch you back here next Wednesday. Again, same time, same place. KBVR Corvallis 88.7 FM or online, kbvr.com/listen. Big shout out to Matt Brooks, my guy, for coming on in today on short notice. Again, probably should have Soren Carl back next week. Him and Matt Volman both had midterms to study for, so it goes school first. But for Matt Brooks, my name's Mitchell Manji. Thanks for tuning in to the Beaver Sports Radio Show. Have a great evening.